two interns are our timekeepers. You want to show them the sign? Whoa. Give them the 1 minute, the 30, all the things.
Great.
Okay, great. I believe we are live and ready to go. Can you see that? Yeah? That's not bad. Okay. Some folks are saying they can't hear me. Andy, we got this? We good to go? Ryan, you tell me when we're sounding good on the audio. Okay, I'll just lean into the mic. How about that? I'll make it work. All right. Thank you, everybody, for grabbing your seats. Hello and welcome to Law School, a primary debate between the two Republican candidates seeking to be Oklahoma Attorney General. My name is Trace Savage, and I'm the editor-in-chief of nondoc.com. We're an independent online journalism publication based in Oklahoma City here. I'm on stage tonight co-moderating with Storm Jones of News 9. He's their morning anchor, so he's going to bed right after we get done with this.
That's right. Straight to bed.
Yep.
Hey, News 9 is graciously streaming this debate on news9.com and the Facebook pages of News 9 and NonDoc, as well as other media partners like The Frontier. So look for fact-check results from The Frontier in the coming days. So candidates, choose your exaggerations carefully, all right?
Thank you so much for OCCC allowing us to be in this venue. It's really wonderful. It's a beautiful visual and performing arts center, and we really appreciate OCCC's allowing us to be here today. Debates do take some time and some money to produce, so I want to thank the financial sponsors for NonDoc's 2022 Public Debate Series, including the State Chamber of Oklahoma, AARP Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Public Schools Resource Center, the advocacy firm of McSpadden, Milner, and Robinson, the Oklahoma Association of Realtors, and Overman Legal Group. Thank you so much for believing in public debates. This really matters.
Hey, before we get underway, we do want to ask two things of the audience. Number one, consider sharing the live stream on Facebook. Let your friends be as informed as you all are for being here tonight. And number two, please go ahead and silence your cell phones, and we'll get it underway.
Awesome. Well, let me tell you about the format real quick. We'll have 2-minute opening statements from each candidate. We'll then have 3 rounds of questions. We'll end with 2-minute closing statements as well. We flipped a coin earlier, and if I'm not mistaken, Mr. O'Connor, you're going to go first with 2 minutes in the opening statement.
That's right. You ready?
Yes, sir. Go
All right,
ahead.
here we go. Good evening, everybody. I'm John O'Connor. I've been working for 10 months as your Attorney General. I was born in Tulsa. My dad was from Jeff City, Missouri. He was a machinist for the Frisco Railroad across the river in Tulsa. Mom was from Woodward. They met in Tulsa and had 6 kids. They raised us in a family of strong family values and faith. I met my wife, well, let me just say this. All 6 of us kids put our own way through Oklahoma State University. And I met my wife, Lucia, there, Lucia Miller from Buffalo, Oklahoma. We've been married 43 years. We have 4 kids and 10 grandchildren. I wanted to tell you some of the work that I've done for you. It basically follows 3 different things. Number one, fighting federal overreach and defending our state's rights and our individual rights and freedoms. And secondly, standing up for the safety of all Oklahomans, including the unborn and our Oklahomans of Native American descent. And then third, defending our conservative values. The reason I said yes when Governor Stitt asked me to be Attorney General was because I can't stand the thought of handing this America over to our kids and our grandkids. I'm very proud of the conservative groups that have endorsed me, and I'll list them later in this time. And you have a very clear choice in this race. My opponent is a Democrat in Republican clothing. He's been supported by the Democrats, the same Democrats who supported Joy Hoffmeister, the Democrat, supported my opponent with more funds. My opponent gave money to the Biden for President campaign against President Trump. My opponent gave money to the Democrat who ran against U.S. Senator Tom Coburn. He gave money to the Democrat who ran against Tulsa federal Congressman Jim Bridenstine. Notice that the Democrats did not have somebody file for Attorney General because they have a Democrat in the Republican primary. He is supported by tribal politicians and tribal dark money. You've seen their ads. That's all a bunch of lies. Listen tonight for how he treats the McGirt and the Native American issues.
Mr.
We
Attorney
do
General,
not
you've
need,
got that woe sign right
oh, sorry.
there. Just wrap it up. Thank you
We
very
do
much.
not need a Democrat as our Attorney General right now. He will not represent the state sovereignty, and he will not represent the interests of conservative Republicans. Thank you.
Find that. So a couple things. We do have a limited amount of time here tonight, so if we can keep our applause till the end of each round, it stops the audio from going all herky-jerky for the thousands of folks watching this at home. So just kind of wait till we get to the end of the round, please, if we can. And then we just want to make sure we see those timekeepers as well. Mr. Drummond, 2-minute opening statement to you. 2-minute, 15-second, if you like it.
Thank you, Trace. Good evening. I'm Gentner Drummond. I'm an Osage County resident, a rancher, banker, lawyer, former prosecutor, former fighter pilot who fought in the Gulf War, was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for disobeying an order, putting myself in harm's way and doing the right thing. That discipline and self-sacrifice has served me well in commerce and in law, where I have, in our 7 companies, created hundreds of jobs, and as a litigator, tried hundreds of cases. And that same template has served me well in this campaign and will serve me well as your Attorney General, where we put the 4 million Oklahomans first, where we create jobs and we do the right thing. But what does this race really offer? We've got the appointee who is basically serving the administration and special interest groups, but Oklahomans deserve an Attorney General who will investigate and prosecute the grifters and the fraudsters who are stealing our money, our state coffers, our tax dollars, who will uphold the rule of law, who will demand transparency of all agencies and not hide public audits or refuse to release records and defend against open records requests, and who will sit down with our Native American brothers and sisters and work toward a solution on McGirt. Not hire Washington, D.C. club members at $1,000 an hour and spend literally scores of millions of dollars to rack up 33 losses at the Supreme Court. We need an Attorney General who puts bad people in jail and who protects good people. We need an Attorney General who will defend you, the people, who will uphold the rule of law, and who will serve the people of Oklahoma, not the special interest groups. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll let that one go. That's fair. We got double applause there, but we'll hold it till the end of the rounds. Thank you guys so much. Let's get to our first round of questions. It's titled Attorney General Client Privileges. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer each question. Storm?
Yeah, this first question will be directed at Mr. Drummond first, and then General O'Connor, you'll have a chance at it. A state law does not require Oklahoma's Attorney General to actually be an attorney, but it's probably for the best
Whoa.
that you both are. Where did you go to law school, and what was the most important lesson you learned in law school?
After serving our military, our country as a fighter pilot for 8 years in the Air Force, I was out east and I studied law out east at Georgetown Law. At that point, I had 3 children and the 4th born shortly thereafter, and I needed an opportunity to earn some money. And so, notwithstanding the other law schools I got accepted into, I worked on the Hill, wrote legislation, worked with Oklahomans back here, and studied law at Georgetown. And I will tell you the most important thing that I learned working in Washington, D.C., was that the Democratic Party does not represent Oklahoma's interests. It was at that point in my life when I realized I am a Republican, and Oklahoma's values are conservative in every regard. And I walked away from law school learning that Oklahomans respect the rule of law, want conservative government, small government, decisions made at the lowest level, and that we want the people to be represented by our elected officials. Thanks.
Mr. O'Connor, 90 seconds, same question.
Thank you. Well, that notice that you had of that Republican values prevail must have been very recent, because in 2017 you wrote an email that said that Kevin Hearn's affinity for President Trump is a non-starter for me. This is you from your own email.
John, you know that's a lie.
Any meeting is a waste of time. Ladies and folks, that was on December 8th. That was on December 8th of 2017, written on Gentner Drummond's email. So he says, Kevin Hearn's affinity for President Trump is a non-starter for me. So he must have learned that lesson. So the practice of law and law school, I went to the University of Tulsa. It's a great law school. But look at all the issues that we've been involved with. Right to life, you know, we've stood up for the right of the unborn. We've sued the Biden administration over its failure to comply with immigration laws. We've just today we filed charges against some lawyers who were setting up ghost owners for medical marijuana operations. We have had to make decisions regarding the sovereignty of the state of Oklahoma in eastern Oklahoma against the Supreme Court liberal McGirt decision. So literally everything you do as the Attorney General is representing the state of Oklahoma, all Oklahomans, or our agencies, boards, and commissions. So when a lawsuit is filed,
We've got that time's up sign.
That's
sir.
it? Okay,
I'm
when a
sorry.
lawsuit is-
I'm going to be like a judge tonight and like make everybody answer the questions and follow the rules. So really,
Yeah.
if you guys are shouting in here, I know there's 70 people in here, and that's great, but it means that the people listening at home cannot hear your own candidate talking. So I'm just trying to explain why that's not what we're looking for.
And it also cut into his time, so time's up on this question. We will give Mr. Drummond 30 seconds to respond to the email Mr. O'Connor raised.
here it is if you want to see it.
It's so easy to take an email. It's so easy to take an email and falsify it. This candidate has given hundreds of thousands of dollars to Republican people running for office, to include thousands of dollars to President Trump, thousands of dollars to Inhofe, Langford, Hearn, Mullen, Lucas, and Cole, and thousands of dollars to Republican candidates for the legislature. One of us is only given to pay to play, and that's the appointee.
You want to see your email?
I'll take it. If you want to walk it over to me, that'd be great. Mr. O'Connor, I've got the next question for you. You were appointed Attorney General by Kevin Stitt 11 months ago. You've never held public office before, and now you are leading a team of prosecutors for the first time. What has been the biggest challenge of your last year in office, and what have you learned so far?
Well, it's been incredible to represent the state of Oklahoma. For example, when the legislature passes a bill and the governor signs it, then it goes into law, and some special interest groups will try to thwart that law. So I'm very proud of the fact that there's a lawsuit entitled Planned Parenthood versus O'Connor. And so really that has been very fulfilling for me. I think one of the biggest challenges has been dealing with the capital punishment and just the fact that since I've been in office, the federal judge has ruled that the three drug mix that Oklahoma uses satisfies the Eighth Amendment of the Constitution. And so now we have 25 people who are in line for execution. And I think any time you're dealing with a situation that's life or death, that's got to be a kind of a gut check. Even though I don't have a decision in that process other than we defend the appeals. But, and as you know, I disagreed with the governor when he commuted the Julius Jones death penalty to life. And I sent a statement out saying that I stood by law enforcement and our appellate judges and our court system. But there are challenges, but it's an incredible job and an opportunity to serve the people of Oklahoma.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Drummond, recall, again, we're going to wait till the end of the round. I'm not trying to be rude up here. It's just we've got a lot of people watching at home, right? Mr. Drummond, recalling your 2018 campaign against Attorney General Mike Hunter, this becomes your second time to challenge an incumbent Attorney General who was appointed by a governor and not elected by the public. What specifically made you challenge Mr. Hunter 4 years ago, and why specifically did you feel you needed to challenge Mr. O'Connor this year?
You know, I just wouldn't know what to do if I weren't running against an appointee. I chose to run in 2018 because Mr. Hunter had been in politics too long. He was captured by special interest groups, and I knew that power intoxicates, and absolute power of the Attorney General's office intoxicates absolutely. As you will recall, I lost that race by 271 votes out of over 300,000 cast. And it was a great opportunity to learn so much about Oklahoma and the political system. In this instance, after Mr. Hunter resigned, I declared my candidacy and immediately began to run as a conservative Republican, independent of any appointment. I find it distasteful that we have to fill offices with appointments. The appointments typically create a fealty, a loyalty between the appointee and the appointor, which is evident in this instance that effectively Governor Stitt has his personal attorney general, and the state of Oklahoma at this point has none.
Thank you very much.
A little bit of rebuttal there.
I think we want to keep it moving on. We're running a little bit behind. We got a lot of good questions. We'll get to some stuff.
Well, let me just.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. All
right.
All right. 15 seconds to
well,
use, sir.
The fact of the matter is that when Mr. Hunter resigned, Attorney General Hunter resigned, Mr. Drummond reached out to the governor and wanted the appointment, and then 37 weeks later did not get it. So I think that's a little different. And plus, if Mr. Hunter had been in politics too long, at that time I'd been in politics never.
I appreciate it.
When I was in the presence
15
of the
seconds.
governor, he made it very clear that it's his appointment and that there were certain conditions to that appointment. And that would compromise the integrity of the office, and I would rather lose with my integrity than compromise my integrity for an appointment.
And let me say that there were no conditions imposed by the governor when he asked me to serve. Zero.
5 seconds. Okay.
All right.
Again, thank you. Okay, we're going to go to 2-minute answers just on this question, and we're going to flip that order because we want to start with Attorney General O'Connor. Storm, you've got this question.
Yeah, Attorney General O'Connor, in November, the Oklahoma Supreme Court reversed the district court ruling in the state's lawsuit against Johnson & Johnson for the manufacturing and distribution of opioids. The district court judge had rendered a $465 million judgment, but the Supreme Court ruled 5-1 that the state had improperly applied the nuisance statute. This important litigation was initiated by your predecessor, Mike Hunter, and led by the contracted law firms of Witten Burridge and Nix Patterson. Where does the state stand now on the opioid lawsuits, and what can your office do besides watch as other states succeed in their cases?
Well, I think first of all we need to start by empathizing with the families who have lost loved ones to opioids. And it was 3 strong families in Oklahoma City who decided to stop all this madness of these opioids being prescribed. Anybody in this room has probably gotten a prescription of a bottle of 30 opioids, 30 pain pills, and now that's 5, I think. But so that's where I would start. But I would also say that judgment was on a public nuisance theory, and so I inherited the case of $465 million. It grew to $500 million with interest, but I had mixed emotions about the fact because it was attempting to take what would be products liability and really broadly expand it in a way that could have hurt other industries in Oklahoma. So I had mixed emotions about it, but again, I inherited that. I wanted the $500 million in the fight against opioid addictions, but I had mixed emotions about the theory on which the judge ruled in that matter. But let me say this, Oklahoma is not just sitting by. Oklahoma collected almost $400 million in a settlement with Purdue that is funding some great research now on how to treat people who have opioid addiction. So, but we're now, we still have claims pending against distributors, and we're in discussions with them, and so I think there'll be a substantial sum of money that we'll still recover to help our cities, our towns, and the state who've lost money and been damaged by opioid addiction which is out of control in the state of Oklahoma.
You've got 30 seconds left. I want to ask you a quick follow-up. You mentioned cities and counties and towns, and I know there's been some discussion and frustration with municipalities and counties who haven't necessarily been included in these broader cases. So where does that stand now? Are they getting worked in on any potential settlement on any of the distributorships, or?
Yes. In fact, a year ago, $22.5 million was set aside for cities and towns. But it was only going to go to the cities and towns who had hired lawyers, not to the cities and towns that had not hired lawyers. And so we put it in our legislative agenda to make that fair to all the cities and towns, whether or not they had hired attorneys. So now that legislation was passed. It's been signed by the governor. We had the first meeting of the opioid abatement board the other day, and now all the cities and counties will qualify, not just those who hired lawyers.
Mr.
Okay,
Drummond, you had a lot to...
I'm sorry, Storm.
Yeah.
For the future, for the pending cases that still exist, you're working with the city and county's attorneys in that?
We are. Yeah,
Okay.
we are. We're working closely with them, and I suspect that any future settlement will have allocations for the cities and counties as well.
Thank you. Storm?
All right, Mr. Drummond, you had a lot to say about this in 2018. What should the state be doing now in the wake of the Supreme Court tossing the Johnson & Johnson verdict?
Okay, so what I think is the appointee has been distracted with other things, but what happened when we permitted our non-RFP'd attorneys to dismiss all causes of action except public nuisance, any complex litigator in the state realized at that point that we had lost. Because public nuisance is so broad that you could drive a bus through it, there was no way our Supreme Court was going to grant that. So the nuisance continues to this day. Men and women, boys and girls, young people are still suffering from the opioid factory. And we have the opportunity to bring that lawsuit anew against J&J. And why it has not been done for the last 10 months is a mystery. But under my administration, we will do an RFP for highly qualified Oklahoma attorneys. We will bring the action again against J&J. We will prosecute it under causes of action that stand at law as supported by the facts. And we will get a judgment against this company that injured Oklahomans.
So, and I'm not a lawyer, just to make sure, I'm sorry, I just want to ask a follow-up. So that's allowed, that's not, because you dismissed, because the state dismissed before, you can refile?
We did not dismiss with prejudice. We went forward with one cause of action. We adjudicated one cause of action, and the Supreme Court said that doesn't sound at law. There are multiple causes of action that remain and continue, and we need to do something.
Okay.
January, we'll start it.
Thank you very much. I have the next question for you, Mr. Drummond. As Oklahoma Attorney General, it's very related to what we were just talking about. The top prosecutor is leading dozens of staff attorneys in defending and pursuing the state's interests. However, there are instances like this when the state seeks outside counsel that can often be very costly to fight court battles. Fiscal conservatives sometimes argue that too much of that work is done out of house and could be done in-house at much less expense. What is your philosophy when it comes to hiring outside attorneys?
So the Attorney General's agency, it's a large bureaucracy, scores and scores of talented, qualified attorneys. I have been supervising people all of my adult life, hundreds, 911 as we speak. So I'm used to deploying resources in the form of human personnel efficiently and effectively. So anything that we can do inside the Attorney General's office will be done under my administration. And to the extent we must go out, we will do requests for proposals to Oklahoma-based attorneys, and we'll find the most qualified outside counsel. We will not send our taxpayer dollars to Dallas, because allegedly a bigger city means they're smarter than Oklahoma, or to Washington, D.C., where there's a club that charges $1,000 an hour. We will use Oklahomans. Although the Attorney General's office is not required to do an RFP, this Attorney General will follow the same rules and statutes and requirements that all other agencies in the state of Oklahoma follow and do an RFP and find the most qualified. And we have 6,000 to choose from.
Thank you very much. I actually think that Senate Bill 984 passed this year,
It
and I
did.
think it does require an
That's
RFP.
right. The
So
governor
that's an
signed
exciting
that.
fact. The backstory of that bill is fascinating. You guys can Google non-doc Senate Bill 984.
Trace,
Yes, sir.
let me just rebut for a second. This is a great point, because when the Oklahoma Supreme Court reversed the $500 million judgment against J&J, because the fees were on a contingent fee basis, no money was spent to those lawyers for that. No reimbursement was paid for the expenses that they incurred. And so that's the trade-off when you hire lawyers, now, first of all, those lawyers were hired before I got involved, and the case was way down the road by the time I got involved. But when you hire lawyers and they're willing to take all the financial risk off the taxpayers, then you can swing for the fence on some of these things. And the D.C. attorney that we hired had argued, this was in the McGirt case, and you notice that my opponent is going to be soft on McGirt all night long. We hired a lawyer in Washington, D.C. who has argued before the U.S. Supreme Court 35 times, and he calls it a club, but the fact is, when you've clerked up there and you've argued up there, they have a personal relationship with the 9 justices on that court.
Thank you very much, sir. We've got that whoa sign coming up. Now, Mr. Drummond, 30 back seconds
Just
to
in
you.
a quick rebuttal on that. The club, that's the equivalent of backroom deals, smoke-filled rooms. The law is the law, and I believe in the consistency of that with our United States Supreme Court. 9 justices who will determine the law on the facts, not yield to a club member, which we've lost 33 times, so apparently the club doesn't work.
Yeah, we have not lost 33 times. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, we've got great fact checkers with the Frontier out of Tulsa. They'll figure it out for us later
Get some
today.
fact checking going on.
That's the end of round 1. Now, there we go. All right. We had that pent up, I think. Okay, round 2 is titled Schrodinger's Reservation Theory. I think that's funny. Google Schrodinger's cat if you don't. We're going to have 90 seconds to answer the questions in this round. Quickly, I want to provide some background just so we all know where we're at. In July 2020, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in McGirt v. Oklahoma that for the purposes of the Major Crimes Act, the historic Muskogee Nation Reservation had never been disestablished by Congress, meaning its 3.2 million acres still exists as Indian Country Reservation under 18 U.S.C. 1151A. Then, an Oklahoma appellate court cited the SCOTUS decision to affirm the historic reservations of the Chickasaw Nation, the Choctaw Nation, the Cherokee Nation, the Seminole Nation, the Quapaw Nation. Immediately, I can do that. Immediately, what this meant is that only the federal government and those tribes, not the state of Oklahoma or its counties, have jurisdiction to prosecute violent crimes and major property crimes in eastern Oklahoma, including most of the Tulsa area. Governor Kevin Stitt and Attorney General O'Connor have pushed back and tried to regain criminal jurisdiction for the state. In the meantime, lawsuits are underway that attempt to affirm the reservation's existence in regard to civil law also, such as mining regulation and taxation authority. That's a lot of preface for the questions in this round, but the topic is complicated and important. So, Storm?
Yeah, we have 5 meaty questions in this round, but first I wanted to ask you, did either of you take a tribal law class in law school?
I did not.
Did not?
I did.
Okay, first, General O'Connor, where did you get your most knowledge or understanding of this subject matter in law school?
Well, in law school, that was 40 years ago.
Maybe after law school.
Okay, look, we have a Solicitor General's unit in the Attorney General's office, 5 lawyers who have become experts on Native American law, and even though the Supreme Court has tossed it on its ear now, we also hired outside counsel in Washington, D.C. that's very familiar with Native American law. So, and we've had consultations. So we have the best lawyers in the country advising us on Native American law.
We'll hop into that. Mr. Drummond, tell me about your tribal law education and your understanding of this subject matter.
I took a tribal law class at Georgetown, knowing that I live in Oklahoma and that tribal matters are very important. Oddly, Justice Scalia taught a couple of those, so it was very interesting to sit at the foot of a Supreme Court justice and understand from the Supreme Court the issues of tribal law. So in this instance, and frankly, I live on the Osage, inside the Osage Reservation. Every square inch of my ranch, the mineral interests are owned by the Osages. So I've grown up working with the Osages and understand, have a strong working knowledge of the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Osage Nation.
Okay. This first question will be to Mr. O'Connor first with 90 seconds. You and Governor Kevin Stitt have spoken of chaos in eastern Oklahoma, though some have pushed back on that characterization. Do you understand why some tribal citizens feel Governor Kevin Stitt and your AG's office have spoken disrespectfully about tribal sovereignty without acknowledgement of historic promises and past state tribal success? 90 seconds.
Yeah, so I respect our tribal friends, our Oklahomans of Native American ancestry, but I will say this. Listen to this quote from the Biden Department of Justice. Just in 2022, this drastic increase in FBI jurisdiction poses a significant public safety risk, given the challenges associated with the increased number of violent criminal cases now under federal jurisdiction in Oklahoma's Indian country. So we know now, based in Biden's own Department of Justice says in a filing with Congress that they only prosecute 1 in 4 felony referrals. That means 3 out of 4 felony referrals from sheriffs, police departments, district attorneys to the federal government are not being prosecuted. So we have situations in eastern Oklahoma in terms of public safety where the individual victim, who's a Native American, does not get justice. And that's the chaos we're talking about. But you don't have to rely on Governor Stitt or me. You can listen to the FBI and the DOJ as to what they say. They also say they expect a significant surge in nonviolent crime in 2023. Well, of course, if you're not prosecuting criminals, crime goes up.
I think the issue that some people have maybe concern is not being recognized here is that the tribal nations are working to add capacity to their court systems, and that doesn't happen overnight. But their argument would be that didn't get, say, put into that answer, and so they feel like maybe they're not being shown respect as a sovereign equal in that regard in trying to come together and find a solution.
Okay, well, let me say this. I reached out to 5 of the 6 tribes in eastern Oklahoma, the chiefs, and I met with 4 of them. One of them wouldn't meet with me, and I still need to call the other one. But I had good meetings with them, and then we went into this election cycle. And in the election cycle, as you know, tribal money is going for my opponent because it'd be a lot easier for the tribes if they were not facing a lawyer who was standing for state sovereignty, but was a lawyer who they had already supported and they would get an easy run from.
Let's go over to Mr. Drummond.
So presently, the appointee strategy is pound the table, stomp your foot, and hold your breath. And that's failed, and it's failing. And crime is going up because the chief law enforcement officer has abdicated that duty. The solution is in our hands. The Supreme Court has ruled the Major Crimes Act is the law of the United States. That applies to Oklahoma and our Indian partners on the east side of the state. The federal legislators are not going to come into our rescue. They don't care about eastern Oklahoma, and they've been part of the genocide and removal of the Native Americans from the eastern seaboard. So you're not going to get Congress to act on this. We Oklahomans need to solve the Oklahoma problem. The Native American members of Oklahoma are 400,000 strong. They are Oklahomans. They are we. We simply need to treat our brothers and sisters with dignity and reach out across the aisle and shake their hand. There is a solution. I've met with 33 of the 39 chiefs, governors, tribal councilmen, leaders. They all want bad people in jail and good people protected. And this is the essence of the agreement that they would accept as an intergovernmental agreement from the state of Oklahoma to each individual tribe in an individual capacity. Recognize the sovereignty that the Supreme Court has already recognized for the last 500 years. 200 years, pardon me, 200 years. Cross-deputize our district's attorney, our sheriffs, and our police force to serve in that capacity. Anytime we arrest a Native American perpetrator or a non-Native who's perpetrated a crime against a Native, we notify that respective tribe. They reserve the right to pull them out into the federal system or the tribal system. Otherwise, and so long as we don't illustrate racism and disparagement, let the state prosecute the bad guys. That will do away with our problems, and it will solve the McGirt issue.
Let me just say this. That's the very thing we asked for. Let me say, we have had a very massive win that my opponent seems to forget. When McGirt came down, we sought that it be determined not retroactive. If it had been retroactive, it would have vacated tens of thousands of felony convictions and let felons out of prison. We won that. That's a massive victory that it was not retroactive. We've also asked the U.S. Supreme Court, since the federal government cannot keep Native Americans safe in eastern Oklahoma, we asked them on April 27 if we could have concurrent jurisdiction by the state of Oklahoma, like we have for 113 years, to prosecute non-Indians who victimize Indians in eastern Oklahoma. We're waiting on that decision in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Well, you're going to get it in 2 questions here, so let's just move on to the way.
Yes,
let's pay attention to that time's up sign. Storm, you have the follow-up to Mr. Drummond. We went off on a little tangent there.
I think we're good to move on.
Are we?
Question 2.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That sounds good. We'll just go to my next question. I say tangent. I love to get in the weeds. I want to ask immediately, both of you, about the tort obligations of cross-deputization agreements, because a lot of local law enforcement care about that, but we'll keep moving forward.
They do.
Mr. Drummond, some Republican politicians and interest groups have advocated for Congress to disestablish the 6 Indian country reservations in eastern Oklahoma. Do you support that sentiment or not?
Regardless, I'm trying out to be Attorney General, not Speaker of the House or Senate Pro Tem. So the issue is, what is the law in the United States? And the law in the United States has been established by the Supreme Court. We have made thousands of treaties with Native American tribes. And it is time for Americans and Oklahomans to honor our promises. So the disestablishment of these tribes in eastern Oklahoma will not occur by Congress, nor the Supreme Court, nor will they voluntarily give up their jurisdiction. It is incumbent upon Oklahomans to make a pact with Oklahomans.
Let me just
real quick, I'm sorry, sir. So that's a leaning no? You're not in favor of this?
I'm not in favor of stripping Native Americans of any rights that they've been granted by treaty.
Okay, thank you. Same question to you, Attorney General O'Connor, 90 seconds. Do you support the sentiment of asking Congress to disestablish these reservations?
Yeah, so it's not just me who supports that. For 113 years, the federal government, the tribal governments, and the state of Oklahoma all treated this as though there were no reservations. In 2016, one of our tribal leaders testified to the U.S. Congress that there were no reservations in the state of Oklahoma. I did a CLE the other day, and from a former tribal Supreme Court justice, and she was teaching in 2015 to lawyers, there are no reservations in Oklahoma. Statehood replaced that. So the promise that we need to be looking at is the promise to the people of eastern Oklahoma who bought their homes and have paid 20 years on a 30-year mortgage, and that'll be their primary retirement asset, the promise to them that they own their land and their homes under the circumstances that they understood when they bought their homes, and that is that the state of Oklahoma is their sovereign.
30 seconds to you, Mr. Drummond. 30 seconds to you. Again, sorry. Thank you very much. 30 seconds to you, sir.
The appointee misunderstands the law. The Major Crimes Act relates to criminal activity. It has no bearing on real estate. You're talking to a real estate attorney who owns abstracts throughout eastern Oklahoma. Everybody's land is safe and sound. No civil law will be abrogated. The sovereignty of Oklahoma is absolute. It relates simply and narrowly to the Major Crimes Act only. And this is a red herring. This is divisive activity by the administration and the appointee to draw a distinction between Native Americans and Oklahomans, and it is untenable.
Mr. O'Connor, 30 seconds to you, sir.
Give me a rebuttal on that.
I am.
First of all, I wish that Mr. Drummond spoke for the tribes. If he would come forward right now, because he appears to be speaking for them, if he would come forward right now and say on behalf of all 6 tribes that McGirt is not civil and they will not try in any way to construe McGirt as civil, then that would be a major advance for us. But he's not their lawyer, even though he's paid by them. So at any rate, we've had almost 9,000 Oklahomans of Native American descent who have protested paying their income taxes to the state of Oklahoma on the theory that it's not their sovereign.
It's like you're reading my script ahead of time. We're going to get to there in just a
Well,
second.
that's civil that he says doesn't exist.
15 seconds, sir.
What the appointee confuses is the Native Americans are posturing with the state of Oklahoma because we seem to be so hostile to the Native Americans that they're raising these issues of civil rights when none exist at law. And if we would simply get over our ego and enter into an agreement to bring resolution to McGirt, this would not be an issue.
15 hard seconds,
I feel
General
like
O'Connor.
I feel like I'm watching the lawyer in the dance scene in the show Chicago, right? I mean, it's hard to know. All I can tell you is my opponent is bought and paid for by the Indian nations, and so he's going to dance and shuck and jive.
John, you know that's a lie.
But
That's a lie, John.
We're going to continue to stand for the sovereignty of the state of Oklahoma. And as soon as we get past these elections and the millions of dollars they're spending to try to defeat the governor and to defeat me, I think we'll be able to have productive discussions.
I have a little, I'm going to page 11 on the script. I just had written this down. According to Ethics Commission records, Mr. Drummond, you have received a single $2,900 donation from the Citizen Potawatomi Nation based here in Oklahoma. Mr. O'Connor, you've received a $2,900 donation from the Otoe Missouri tribe here in Oklahoma, as well as $2,900 each from a tribe in California and a tribe in North Dakota. You mentioned, who's bought and paid for, and I'm not saying anybody is, but I am curious, what is the interest of a tribe in North Dakota and a tribe in California in your election?
Well, that's interesting. I guess what they're interested in is recognition of their tribes. I mean, it's not been a significant thing for me. But did you go ahead and look at the individuals who contributed to his campaign, like Governor Anatoby, the governor of the Chickasaws? I mean, did you go ahead and finish that examination?
I was looking at the actual. I just find it fascinating the tribes that are allowed to give as sovereign nations.
I see. Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think there's a significant amount of money that's been poured into the campaigns against me because what they want is they want a lawyer who you've heard say it. The state of Oklahoma lost the McGirt decision. We need to take a knee in front of our tribal friends and ask them to dictate their terms to us.
15 seconds, Mr. Drummond. Yes.
I'm honored that Governor Anatoby would find me worthy to be the Attorney General. And I think what it illustrates is the Native American leaders in the state of Oklahoma are desperate for a mature, qualified attorney who will show respect to all Oklahomans and not show racism or discrimination.
Storm, let's go to you on question 3.
This next question will begin with Mr. O'Connor, and you'll have 90 seconds.
90 seconds.
You may have heard the phrase, a civil war hurts everybody, when referenced in discussing the tensions between state leaders and tribal leaders. If elected to a 4-year term, what specifically will you prioritize? What will you specifically do to prioritize cooperation over conflict?
Yeah. Well, realize that for 40 years I practiced law, mostly representing businesses, and 90% of the time those cases get settled because the CEOs get together and they'd rather fashion their own settlement or compromise than trust it to a judge. And so that's the background from which I come. That's why I reached out to the tribal chiefs and the governor. And there's no question that if we could work something out, that would be great. But right now, the 4 liberal justices and Justice Gorsuch dealt the tribes a royal flush, and they really have not had much interest in talking with the state in terms of negotiations. It's a little bit like this in a divorce where the wife says, hey, honey, can't we just work through the financial terms of this divorce and make it as painless as possible? And the husband says, we can do that as long as you agree from the get-go that I get custody of the kids. And that's what the tribes have been doing, basically saying they will talk with us about criminal jurisdiction as long as we agree from the get-go that they are sovereign.
So has the train left the station on any cooperation?
No. As I said, once we get through this artificial period of the campaign, it just came at a bad time for those relationships. There is an opportunity. The state will be there in common sense with logic and attempting to work out deals with the Indian nations. We just can't have a situation where we have to shove off and agree that they're sovereign. Here's what the deal is. We've never had a situation where the U.S. and the Oklahoma and the state of Oklahoma, we're all Oklahomans, we're all U.S. citizens, and now the U.S. Supreme Court has put 6 reservations on top of that. What does that mean? That's why we're taking cases to the U.S. Supreme Court, because Congress is not going to act. Somebody has to tell us what's it mean to have a reservation on top of our statehood and our nation. And so we'll work through that.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Connor, I really just want to ask one question. You said that if the state agrees the nations are sovereign, are you saying that, do you disagree with the idea that the tribal nations are sovereign nations?
No, they're not sovereigns. They're dependent sovereigns, and I agree with that. That's how Indian law is developed. And the federal government is their ward, and they're the guardian. I mean, the guardian, and they're the ward. But the question is, what does it mean? Like, I talked to one of the tribal council members in January, and I said, so what you're envisioning is that the city of Tulsa will collect sales taxes and then remit 100 cents on the dollar to the Osage, the Creeks, or the Cherokees and the Creeks, and then those tribal councils will budget some amount back to the city of Tulsa for police and fire and streets and admin. And this council member said, yeah, that's how I see it. Now, what are the chances that the tribes are going to allocate funds back to the city to the extent that we need it for law enforcement, firefighters, and streets?
Mr. Drummond, 30 seconds. Sovereign nations?
You still have 90 seconds.
Yeah, well,
90
sure.
seconds.
Well, we didn't even get, yes, fair.
Yeah, my turn to talk.
Maybe 120 seconds,
Yeah,
who
I think
knows?
so. All right, so here's the issue. So this concept of the royal flush. Again, these are red herrings. So the Supreme Court ruled when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was on, and she's passed. And now we have Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court. Yesterday, she sided with Gorsuch and the liberal justices to establish rights in Texas of the 2 Native American tribes that reside in Texas. The thought of Amy Coney Barrett going, I'm going to reverse my position on Native Americans and grant any kind of appeal is frankly, it's just immature to think that that's going to happen. We have to solve the issue. The issue is that the Native Americans are absolutely clear. They recognize they are semi-sovereign, dependent nations who are wards of the federal government. Nothing has been changed by McGirt. Simply, if you think, several of you have read Killers of the Flower Moon. That movie's going to come out shortly. We in the state of Oklahoma failed the Native Americans in the 1920s. Native American women and men were killed. Our prosecutors and our judges turned an eye because we didn't consider them full citizens. We failed. Now we have become more enlightened. Some of us have become more enlightened. Some have not. Now it's 100 years later, and we have to prove up ourselves by treating the Native American brothers and sisters, Oklahoma voters, as equals. And we do that through working with them and solving our problems. We can do that, and we will do that. And it does not compromise at all our tax base, our real estate laws, or anything. And to say otherwise is to simply bait the debate, bait the fight.
Mr. O'Connor, I'll give you 15 seconds on enlightenment, and then we're going to move forward.
Well, I feel like I'm in an alternate universe because that was just a statement made by a Drummond. But at any rate, it is not a red herring. The fact is he cannot predict how this is going to go. And he can't predict how the U.S. Supreme Court is going to rule, and he cannot predict what how defining 6 reservations on top of the state of Oklahoma is going to look. And so
We're going to get there in just a second. I think, Storm, you have the next question for Mr. O'Connor.
Speaking of the U.S. Supreme Court, any day now, as was mentioned earlier, the High Court will decide the case of Oklahoma v. Castro Huerta, which asks whether the state has jurisdiction to prosecute non-tribal citizens for crimes committed against Native American victims within reservation boundaries. Mr. O'Connor, if the state loses this case, what effect would that have on law and order in eastern Oklahoma, and what would be your next move?
Okay, well, good. Well, first let's talk about Mr. Castro Huerta. He was a non-American who victimized a 5-year-old child. He was convicted of child abuse. His 5-year-old weighed less than 19 pounds, and I think she had cerebral palsy. So So he was sentenced, and then he played the McGirt get-out-of-jail-free card. So we have asked, as you said, remember I said earlier that 3 out of 4 felonies in eastern Oklahoma are not being prosecuted by the federal government. And so we've asked if we could come alongside as the state of Oklahoma with our DAs and our sheriffs and our police chiefs and our law enforcement and prosecute the crimes that are falling through the cracks. And realize this, not long ago we asked sheriffs and police chiefs, have any of you been subpoenaed to tribal court or the federal court to come testify at a preliminary hearing about the crimes you've referred to them? Not one. So those cases are not being prosecuted. The question is, what will we do? Well, first of all, I'm optimistic that we're going to be allowed to provide safety for Native Americans in eastern Oklahoma. And if we're not, then we'll have to figure out some alternatives. Right now, the Native American Oklahomans in eastern Oklahoma are not as safe as they were before the McGirt decision.
Mr. Drummond, 90 seconds, same question. If the state loses this case, what effect will that have?
To be clear, I deeply regret that McGirt was ever decided. But yet, that is our reality. And the strategy that's been employed for the last 2 years has failed. I believe that history is against us on Castro Huerta because we failed in the 1920s. I believe that the Supreme Court will say, if we give concurrent jurisdiction to Oklahoma, federally mandated, then what it will do is take pre-existing areas of Native American land that are in trust. For example, in Osage County, there's the Native American community of Hominy, Gray Horse, and Pawhuska that are exclusive to federal jurisdiction. And to reverse and grant Oklahoma what it seeks in the present case will create cacophony across the state that I don't think the Supreme Court's going to want. So it is incumbent upon Oklahoma to enter into an agreement, and we cannot wait for the Supreme Court to act or the United States Congress to act. We must act. 10 months ago, we could have. January 2023, we will enter into numerous intergovernmental agreements that resolve McGirt and bring crime back under control.
I think we're good to go on the next question.
I'm not sure he mentioned you, did he?
Where are we? Yeah, so Mr. Drummond, we gave you the answer. I have the next question for you. We're going to go to 2 minutes on this one because we brought it up earlier. Let's talk taxes, everybody. You just get scared. Okay, income taxes. The Oklahoma Administrative Code and a 1993 U.S. Supreme Court decision explicitly say that tribal citizens who live and work on their Indian country reservation are exempt from the state of Oklahoma's income tax authority. The state administration says the McGirt decision only applied to criminal law, and the Oklahoma Tax Commission has not approved any of the thousands of exemptions applications filed by tribal citizens. Tribal leaders, however, say the exemption is clear, and the Muskogee Nation has announced its intent to file a federal lawsuit. The law looks clear to me, but you guys are the attorneys, and I'm not. So does the state have the authority to tax income of tribal citizens who live and work on their reservations in eastern Oklahoma?
Yes. We have the authority to tax, and we will tax. We have never been able to tax Native Americans who work for Native American enterprise. We've not done it. We've not done it for 50 years, people. In Osage County, if you're a Native American, if you're an Osage who works for the tribe, you don't pay state income tax. And there's a law that we're not discussing, is Native American, members of Native American tribes can elect incompetency. I know that's a distasteful word, but they can elect incompetency and not even pay federal taxes. That has been the law of the United States for over 100 years. So there's nothing new with this issue. McGirt creates the opportunity for confusion, but calm, intelligent, rational people need to be at the table and separate the two. McGirt, high crimes. The tax code relates to taxation. If a Native American works for a Native enterprise, they never had to pay income tax in the state, and they won't in the future. But living in eastern Oklahoma as a Native American, you will pay taxes to the state of Oklahoma, where you incur income from the state of Oklahoma enterprises.
Mr. O'Connor, 2 minutes to you. Same question.
I don't need 2 minutes. I can tell you McGirt right now specifically expressly says that it is a criminal law case and not a civil law case. And in fact, it says toward the end of the opinion that in civil matters, other defenses may apply that didn't apply in the court's opinion in the criminal context.
Okay, great. We moved on quickly there. I believe that is the end of round 2. Thank you so much. Very good. Great audience. Great audience. Our third round is titled Political as Hell. Don't get mad at me. I just think sometimes things get political as hell. We're going to talk about some matters related to these campaigns and just general statements and things that you guys have done. 90 seconds for each answer here. Storm, you've got the first question for Mr. Drummond.
Yep, this will go to Mr. Drummond first. Former Attorney General Mike Hunter resigned last May, and legal documents and news articles have raised questions about the integrity and apparent politicization of the Attorney General's office under his leadership. Mr. Drummond, you expressed some concerns about Mr. Hunter's decision-making during your 2018 campaign, and as we look back now, what was the most concerning thing from the AG's office during Hunter's years, and what lessons should any subsequent AG learn from his tenure?
I have absolutely nothing negative to say about Mr. Hunter. He is no longer the Attorney General. He was an honorable adversary, and he beat me fair and square, and I gave one of the best concession speeches that I'll never give again. But what the lessons learned, the takeaways are this. The Attorney General is the chief law enforcement officer of the state of Oklahoma. The Attorney General must be held to the highest standard. The Attorney General must require transparency at all levels, apply the rule of law equally, irrespective of political alliances, political backdoor deals, and that's where it's so easy to get off base. We have to have an Attorney General whose loyalty runs directly to the 4 million Oklahomans and not to the political elite and not to anyone who might appoint you or to whom you owe something. That's the takeaway.
Mr. O'Connor, your office is still facing fallout in legal filings from your predecessor's handling of Cabinet Secretary David Castro. Same question, what was the most concerning issue you identified upon taking office, and what lessons should be learned about politicization of the office?
Well, definitely the power of the Attorney General is immense, and so the Attorney General has the authority really to oversee a multi-county grand jury, which can render indictments or informations against people like we did today against the lawyers who were involved in setting up ghost owners and illegal marijuana operations. The Attorney General also approves wiretaps. I mean, the Attorney General's job is a job for a common sense, experienced, level-headed attorney, and not a hothead or not somebody who's vindictive. But I inherited actually a very good staff. We had about 165 people, but about 100 lawyers, and I was pleased that I didn't really have to move anybody. I moved some people in some different seats, but we have a very strong law firm that represents the state of Oklahoma in the Attorney General's office, and we represent the agencies, boards, and commissions, most of them. As I said earlier, we get to defend the state of Oklahoma when there's a pro-life bill or a bill against masking children. We get to do that, and so that's been an honor for me. We also have a civil rights unit. When we learned in Tulsa that Ascension was denying 100% of the religious exemption request to the vaccine, we filed a lawsuit and saved 130 jobs and sent a message across the state of Oklahoma that healthcare employers could grant religious exemption requests without fearing losing the federal money.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah. Mr. Drummond, 30 seconds to you.
Storm, I want to take some of my time that I didn't use because I was talking about the past administration. So presently, we have 5 investigations that are being handled at Oklahoma County's district attorney because they're not being prosecuted by the Attorney General. And those all relate to appointees of the governor or friends of the appointees. We have to investigate at the Attorney General's office. Transparency, we have an audit that was denied release by the Attorney General, but Cindy Byrd overruled and released that. And we have over 50 lawsuits in which citizens of the state of Oklahoma are suing the state for open records, and yet the Attorney General's office is denying those records. We have ratepayers, who are we, that should be represented by the Attorney General before the Corporation Commission, but our Supreme Court said he has abdicated his responsibility to defend the ratepayer. And then we have illegal grows. For the last 10 months, over 6,000 illegal grow operations in the state of Oklahoma, nothing done. That's what has to be done beginning in January 2023.
I'm going to give you 30 seconds, Mr. O'Connor.
I think that's a good idea. First of all, please, folks, my opponent apparently doesn't realize that 99% of crimes are prosecuted by district attorneys, not the Attorney General. I have jurisdiction to prosecute in 77 counties, but the district attorneys, for the most part, are incredible and do a great job. So that's on the Epic deal. District Attorney Prater in Oklahoma County had been investigating that for years, and when the OSBI finished its investigation, he asked if he could continue with it, and I said yes. That made a ton of pragmatic sense to me. The ratepayers, he says it was the Supreme Court. This is something I want you to see as a major distinction between my opponent and me. He's got to hide from you who he really is and then lie about me. It wasn't the Supreme Court that said that the Attorney General's staff abdicated. It was the two of the justices on the liberal wing of the court, and they weren't even addressing the issue that was before the court. But you need to understand the difference. He's got to hide and lie. My job is to just let you know the truth about me and the truth about him.
15 seconds, Mr. Drummond.
Justice Dustin Rowe was a state appointee who criticized the Attorney General for not doing his job in front of the Corporation Commission. That's just a fact.
Let's move on to
It's
the
two
next
justices,
question.
right? It wasn't the Supreme Court majority. Isn't that correct?
3 justices
All right.
criticized you.
Yep.
3.
Was it the majority?
And 1 Republican appointee.
Yeah.
I'm bad at math, that's why I went into journalism. Mr. O'Connor, I've got the next question for you. In a November interview at your office, I really enjoyed it, I asked you how you consider public corruption cases, and your response included the following statement, quote, "I'm hopeful that Oklahoma is a state where we don't have corruption, but I guess human nature would tell me that probably somewhere there is. I just don't know about it." As was mentioned, now at least 2 high-profile investigations into Epic Youth Services and the Swadley's Foggy Bottom Kitchen saga, I'm hungry for barbecue, are being led by the Oklahoma County District Attorney's Office. Has your opinion of whether there's public corruption in Oklahoma changed in the last 7 months since we chatted, and why is the DA carrying so much of that weight?
Well, so the public corruption is incredibly disheartening. It's bad for everybody. It reduces our confidence in our government. It reduces our confidence in our courts. And so obviously we've got to root that out. I told you about Epic. That had been investigated. When they asked me about Swadley's, what they wanted me to do, and folks, this is what the media does if you want to know the inside.
I do. What do I do?
Yeah, thank you, Trace, and thank you, Storm. Excluding these 2 guys. They come to me and they say, well, Swadley's, there's a lawsuit against Swadley's. Are you going to prosecute him? And I say, well, yes, if there's a crime committed. So the OSBI is investigating them. They'll come back with a report. If there's a crime committed, then we will prosecute if David Prater doesn't. The state auditor is doing an audit of Swadley's. If they come back and say Oklahomans are owed money, we'll sue them. What I don't do, and this is the level-headed prosecutor that you need, what I don't do is grab a torch and stir up a bunch of people and go at 10:30 at night in the dark, march down Main Street and burn Swadley's to the ground until I know they've committed a crime.
Well, we definitely should not burn down a barbecue restaurant, but I bet it would smell pretty good if it happened. But don't do that. Do not. Geez, can I make jokes in this world? Okay, Mr. Drummond, similar question to you. The Attorney General's office is in the awkward position of having jurisdiction over corruption in the state legislature while also having its budget controlled by the legislature. The AG's office also represents many state agencies, meaning conflicts often exist when corruption allegations arise. What needs to happen in terms of policy or anything so that Oklahomans can be confident that the Attorney General's office is in a position to root out and prosecute public corruption?
When we drafted our Constitution our drafters made the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And then they said, but we're Oklahomans, and we don't trust these politicians, so we're going to form the Attorney General's office as an independent agency with full force and effect of law and absolute discretion to investigate every agency, every elected official, and every branch of government. When the Attorney General fails to do that, we needed a stopgap. If the Attorney General doesn't do his job, then our Constitution gives the Oklahoma Attorney General jurisdiction so that matters don't fall through the cracks. 5 matters have fallen through the crack and rest on the desk of the Oklahoma District Attorney. If I were Attorney General today, and I promise you in January of 2023, I will take those investigations back to where they belong so that we can reinsert transparency, accountability, and the force of the Attorney General's office in these matters. And if it relates to an elected official, legislator, appointed official, justice, or executive, those parties are open for investigation by an independently minded, well-qualified, conservative Attorney General.
Yeah, tell me if you can find one on your side of the party line. All right, so let me say this. I don't know if he's saying. I don't know if he's saying that there's corruption that's been brought to my attention that I haven't done anything about. But I'll tell you this: if he knows about corruption, he should take it to law enforcement right now and get it acted upon. Don't wait and use it as a political football. And as far as independence, the governor appointed a number of people to the Pardon and Parole Board. I objected to 2 of them because I thought they were getting out of their lane of the duties of what the Pardon and Parole Board should do. I moved to disqualify 2 of the 5 STIT appointees to the board, the Pardon and Parole Board. One of them actually sued me for trying to interfere with the Pardon and Parole Board by getting them removed. So I think I've demonstrated in the few isolated opportunities that I have that I'm completely independent of the legislature, of the governor, and of anybody else. And when there are conflicts of interest, we do refer to, if the Attorney General has a conflict of interest, we'll either bring in a special prosecutor or assign it to one of the district attorneys that doesn't have a conflict.
I'm going to give you a sack of periods. Mr. Drummond, 30 seconds to you.
I think Mr. O'Connor misunderstands prosecution. And I'm, of all on the stage, only one of us has prosecuted bad guys. And what we do is when we see the evidence of a crime, we investigate. We don't delegate. We investigate. And that's what's missing, this basic concept of prosecutorial law, of investigation, then prosecution. Thanks.
Storm, I think you've got the next question from Mr. Drummond.
Yep, this will be directed at Mr. Drummond. We've discussed this some this evening, but let's get into a little bit more. You're running in the Republican primary, and although the bulk of your recent political donations have been made to Republicans, Mr. O'Connor has run advertisements and mentioned this evening criticizing a $1,000 donation you made to Joe Biden and other past donations to Democratic politicians. Former President Donald Trump is still very popular among Oklahoma Republican voters, so how are you supposed to look at your Biden donation and believe you're actually a conservative Republican you claim you are?
Thank you,
90
Storm.
seconds.
I have known John for 30 years, and I really previously had thought that he had integrity. But my consultant said, you know, we need to probably send us a letter. We probably need to send a certified letter to Mr. O'Connor that explains what he had been saying on the campaign trail that I'd given to Biden, which is a lie, and he knows it. In August of 2020, of the election year, my wife went online with her PayPal account, made a contribution. It was tied to our joint credit card account. The receipt came back in my name. She immediately canceled it. No dollars transferred to Biden. We put that in a certified letter, sent that to Mr. O'Connor in January, and he's been playing in that lie ever since. So the question, voters, if Mr. O'Connor will lie on an issue he knows is a lie to get elected, what is he doing behind the closed doors of the Attorney General's office? So that's alarming. Now, as to other contributions. So I can remember when President Trump was on the campaign trail, and he was criticized. He said, Mr. Trump, you gave $5,000 or 20, whatever he gave to Hillary Clinton's New York senatorial campaign. And Mr. Trump said, you know what? I'm a businessman. You know what, folks? I'm a businessman. I've given several $1,000s to President Trump. I've met with President Trump during this campaign cycle. I've given over $75,000 to Republican candidates. And yes, I've given to Dan Boren, who, by the way, is a Republican today. And yes, I gave to Brad Carson, who, by the way, is the president of the University of Tulsa. These are men of integrity whom I've liked and trusted. There are a few other Democratic contributions made. They were classmates of my wife's, happily support classmates of my wife. But in 9-to-1 ratio, I've given to Republicans, and I'll continue to give Republicans, to include our president.
30
President
seconds, Mr.
Trump.
O'Connor.
Yeah, if I had $5 bill in my hand and you wanted me to give it to President Biden, you'd have to cut my hand off. All right? So, yeah, no, I care too much to play both sides. And let me talk about lies for a second. My opponent and his cronies send out a push card that shows me looking in a mirror. I've sued President Biden 15 times on behalf of the state of Oklahoma in 10 months. And they show me looking in a mirror and it's Biden. Then they say I'm for binary birth certificates. I'm the guy that wrote the letter to the Stillwater superintendent of schools saying that there was no law or case that required Stillwater to allow transgender boys in the girls' bathroom.
Thank you very much, sir. Storm's
And then
got
they
the
said I
next
was for
question.
gun control. I'm the highest rated candidate in this race by the NRA, and I'm endorsed by OK2A, the Second Amendment group. So if you want to talk about lies, let's talk about the entire campaign that you're seeing right now. And it doesn't matter who's a Republican now, 10 years later. What matters is he gave money against Tom Coburn. He gave money against Jim Bridenstine. At first, he told us that someone stole his credit card. And then he told us that the campaign automatically fills in the name of the donor. We know that's not true. If
All right,
you
thank
go
you,
and-
sir.
If,
Thank
if-
you, sir.
If
Okay.
you try to go and fill out a donor deal, there's a deal that says field required. You can't go to the next
Thank
page
you, Mr. O'Connor.
without putting the name of the donor in. So whoever made that contribution filled that. The campaign did not.
We'll give you.
Thank you very much.
We've
We've only got a couple questions left, and you'll want to hear them. Mr. Drummond, 30 seconds to you, impugning integrity, back and forth.
Thank you. Fighter pilot, military expert, gun marksman, NRA lifetime member since the early 1990s, and rated A by the NRA. I mean, come on. I'm not the appointee. They don't come out and appoint. They don't endorse anybody. They've both given us an A rating. I actually own guns and know how to use them. With regard to the binary birth certificate, the Attorney General has the authority of an Attorney General opinion, and yet he punted to the legislature on every one of these issues. Transgender bathrooms, binary birth certificates, and women in sports.
Yeah. So somebody has to-
15 seconds. Well, hey, let's let them talk. They're the candidates up here. Let's see where this goes, okay? 15 seconds to you, sir.
Well, so he knows full well that the binary birth certificate dispute all predated me, and the legislature and the governor have fixed that. It's a policy decision, not a question of law. And if he knew that, attorney generals construe law. We don't make policy.
Mr.
I'm a little less worried about the birth certificate than I am your hand. I keep a old belt in my glove box as a tourniquet just in case. So let me know if I need to get it later.
The hand with the $5 bill in it?
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's still down there and it's clenched.
There we go. Storm.
Mr. O'Connor, 90 seconds on this question for you. You've criticized your opponent for making political donations to Democrats, but the other day it was recorded video of former Democratic Attorney General Mike Turpin at one of the state's most prominent establishment Democrats endorsing your campaign, in fact saying that the M in John M. O'Connor stands for money because he was urging people to donate to your campaign. Most Republican voters probably want someone with Mike Turpin's historic ties to the Democratic establishment not to have influence in your campaign. What role is Mr. Turpin playing in now and in the future?
Well, first of all, Mike Turpin was one of our attorney generals, and he was a great prosecutor.
Democrat.
And I'm glad he is a Democrat, but here's the difference. He's not posing as a Republican and running in a Republican primary.
Are we done? Okay, great. Well, I've got the next question. Mr. O'Connor, I have it for you. You were proud to be nominated for a federal judgeship by former President Donald Trump, but in 2018, an American Bar Association committee deemed you, quote, not qualified for the federal bench, and you never received a confirmation hearing. The committee report referred to ethical concerns and evidence of overbilling. What do you think you did to receive that rating?
I'll tell you what I did. I quit the ABA when it became a left-wing lobbyist organization in the 1990s, and it started lobbying for abortion and then later for gun control, and I quit it. I have the highest rating every year since 1995, rated by my peers in the legal profession. I have the highest rating for competence and ethics that can be given by Martindale-Hubbell, which is the national peer. And let me say this. You know, one of the greatest honors I said earlier is that there's a lawsuit called Planned Parenthood versus O'Connor. But right behind that is the fact that the ABA came out against me so strongly. Because as Senator Inhofe said, that's a badge of honor to a true conservative. And the fact that my opponent, he doesn't say the ABA because he knows that somewhere between around 85 and 90% of American attorneys are not dues-paying members of that left-wing lobbyist group called the ABA. But in their ads, they don't say the ABA because then you'd know the truth. They say a National Association of Attorneys. So the fact that the ABA came out with a bunch of lies about me is totally consistent with the fact that they are on the exact opposite side of the political spectrum from me. And frankly, it was an honor to not have their endorsement. And remember, President Bush stopped the process of relying on them while he was president.
Mr. Drummond, I'll give you 15, and I'm going to give it back to Mr. O'Connor also.
15 seconds?
15 seconds, yeah.
The ABA's been rating attorneys for 50 years. 5. They found 5 not qualified. And it was based on lying to a judge, lying to a client, overbilling a client, and while he was under oath testifying to become a federal judge, which he did not become because he was not qualified, he vowed under oath to uphold Roe v. Wade. So Mr. O'Connor likes to play both sides fast and loose on whatever it takes to get what he needs.
Mr. O'Connor, 15 seconds to you.
Yeah. Nobody who's ever practiced law with me or against me or has been a judge believes one word of what he just said. And so we built a very good law firm based on the principles of integrity from 2 lawyers to 28 lawyers in Tulsa, and I stand on my record.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Drummond, I believe I have what may be the last question for you. Multiple businesses that you own applied for and received more than $3 million in Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, forgivable loans intended to help workers stay employed during the pandemic. Your bank processed some of those loans and earned fees from doing so, I think, in the second go-around of PPP. Some folks have criticized affluent individuals like yourself for taking this federal money, especially when it may seem unlikely that a law firm or a cattle ranch might face layoffs during a pandemic. What do you tell voters who think $3 million is a lot of PPP money?
My payroll on a monthly basis is over $5 million. So thanks to President Trump and our legislature, they passed PPP. I'm a job creator. I'm not a W-2 employee. 100% of the dollars that were received by my companies, to include primarily my wireless retail company, went to keep everyone employed, and not one employee failed to get a paycheck, even though they were not working, were sequestered at home, buildings were closed and shuttered. And so I'm a job creator, but the appointee, his firm received more than I did combined, and he is a W-2 employee, and he did receive those funds.
Mr. O'Connor, 15 seconds.
Yeah, so I think during the period that he was in such need, and he received millions of dollars for a bank that he owned the majority interest in, he added like 100 employees. So that tells you the crippling need that his businesses were in. And secondly, he also managed the loans. So he charged the federal government and you and me an extra $62,000 for loan processing fees and for interest. So this is a huckster play.
If I could
15
rebut,
seconds, yes, sir.
he doesn't know how to read the applications or the PPP information, and that the falsity of the increase of 100 employees is absolutely false.
How many was it?
The first round of PPP, you could not apply. You could not apply to a bank that you had an affiliation with. Second round, they opened that up so that we could do that. I don't have any problem being a businessman, creating jobs. By the way, the banks are exempt from applying for PPP, and yet we kept all of our employees on payroll.
Thank you very much.
Those funds were intended for businesses that were on their knees as a result of his President Biden's closing of the economy, not for companies that were soaring
This
financially.
was a Trump project.
Yeah,
and
I'm
Mr.
pretty sure
Trump
that was
opened
before
those
the
doors.
election. No. Yeah, before the election. Anyway, okay, end of the round 3. Applause, everybody. They're going to kick us out of here in just a minute, so we're going to go to our closing statements. Mr. O'Connor, same order as before. 2 minutes to you to close, then 2 minutes to Mr. Drummond. Thank you very much.
Folks, thanks for being here. And for those of you who are viewing, thank you for taking the time to view this. This is an incredibly important race. You have a very clear choice between a pro-life, true conservative who fights the Biden, Harris, Pelosi, Schumer, Drummond group all the time. And the latest, I want to tell you, actions speak louder than words, so I ask you to look at what I've done in the last 10 months in public service to you as the lawyer for the state of Oklahoma and the people of Oklahoma. Also, we're known by the company we keep. Look at these endorsements of people who now see the difference between my opponent and me and have endorsed me. CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee, OPAC, Oklahoma Farm Bureau, Oklahoma Cattlemen's Association, even though my opponent is a cattleman, the American Farmers and Ranchers Cooperative, Oklahomans for Health and Parental Rights, the Patient Choice Coalition. Remember, I wrote the letter to free the doctors to prescribe ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine if they felt that was right for their patient. Tulsa Parents' Voice. The iVoter Guide rated me very conservative. The Susan B. Anthony List, the largest voice for the unborn in the country. The National Right to Life. OK2A, the Second Amendment group in Oklahoma. And as I said earlier, I was rated higher than he was by the NRA. So if we're known by the company we keep, and we're known by the actions that we take. By this point in a man's career, his career, there should be enough evidence to prove what he stands for. Nobody knew he was pro-life until he ran for office.
Your time is up, sir. Thank you very much.
Let me just say, this 2017 email from Mr. Drummond saying that his affinity for Trump was a non-starter for him, tells you all you need to know. He's a Democrat and he's running as a Republican.
Sir, I don't come into your office and violate your rules.
I appreciate your vote. I appreciate your vote on June 28th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We still got 2 more minutes. We're going to hear from Mr. Drummond. Thank you very much. A little rowdy crowd. I thought everybody's
Thank
feeling
you.
hungry.
You know, the differences couldn't be clearer. And on endorsements, the Fraternal Order of Police, 114 lodges in the state of Oklahoma voted, 114 to 0. Dozens of sheriffs have appeared in campaign commercials and have endorsed me. None. Their
Please.
law enforcement is supporting me because law enforcement knows that I stand for law and order. Mr. O'Connor has failed to investigate grifters and fraudsters, namely all these guys that have taken from our tax dollars. Mr. O'Connor has failed to require transparency in our agencies and our state government by hiding reports and keeping documents from citizens. Mr. O'Connor has failed to protect the ratepayers, being considered having abdicated his responsibility. And he has not been loyal to the people of Oklahoma, rather to the special interests. On June 28, you have an opportunity to elect a combat fighter pilot, a job creator, and a skill litigator. I will have a singular purpose to represent the people of Oklahoma, to defend your rights, not appointees and special interests, to uphold the rule of law in the state of Oklahoma, not to undermine it, and to serve the people of Oklahoma, not the political elite. On June 28th, I respectfully ask for your vote for Gentner Drummond, conservative Republican for Attorney General.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you both very much. Thank you to many people in the audience for being here. Thank you to News 9 for streaming this live, for the Frontier, for the fact check. That should be interesting. All of our friends in the media who've shared this and covered this debate. Remember, Election Day, as they both said, is June 28th. Over the next 2 weeks, we have 2 more debate nights scheduled. June 20th, Monday, the 2nd Congressional District in Bartlesville. We've got 2 debates for 14 candidates there. And June 22nd, here in Oklahoma City, the Waterford, the state superintendent race. Please come to those. Please be respectful in the audience. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you, sir. It's a rodeo, you know?
Yeah, sometimes there's 3 bulls and,
Yeah, it's just like being on the back.
All right, appreciate it, gentlemen.